10. Good afternoon. My name is David Cruz. I am the Director of Communications for the League of United Latin American Citizens. LULAC is the oldest and largest Latino civil rights organization. And this afternoon, as most of the country, we learned the very disappointing news of the decision by the U.S. Supreme Court on the implementation of Senate Bill 4 here in the state of Texas. To speak further about the implications and what we intend to do in response to that action by SCOTUS, I introduce to you now Domingo Garcia. He is the national president of LULAC. President Garcia.
Yes. Just to state out briefly, I'm going to be making my comments initially in English. And then after I finish my English comments, I will then switch to Spanish and repeat them in Spanish for those that are from our Spanish language networks and media. Today is March 19th, a day that I believe will be known in infamy as they Show Me Your Papers Day, when the fearmongers, the scapegoaters, the racists were able to pass a bill that allows for over 50% of Texans to be considered suspect, to be subject to racial profiling in our own country. I, as a fifth-generation Texan with Native American roots and who has a great-grandfather that was here, will now be able to be stopped and asked for my passport solely because of the way I look. And depending on which jurisdiction I'm in, every police officer will now be able to act as an immigration agent, even though they don't have the training, even though they don't have the skill sets, and sometimes they have language barriers. And we believe that this is going to result in large-scale racial profiling, like we saw in Arizona when Sheriff Arpaio was the sheriff of Maricopa County, and the violation of civil rights and human rights of both U.S. citizens and immigrants. And so, therefore, we are extremely disappointed with the U.S. Supreme Court decision today. We're going to ask the Department of Justice and those involved in litigation to continue the litigation fight in the Fifth Court of Appeals, since that's where it was sent for. We believe this law is unconstitutional, it's unchristian, immoral, and un-Texan. Texans don't treat people this way. Governor Abbott, I don't know what church you go to, but does your pastor believe that Jesus would do this to fellow Christians and refugees and people looking for a better life? I don't think so. And that's why LULAC will continue to fight for the rights of those immigrants here. We will fight for a bipartisan immigration reform that will truly do something about the situation, the humanitarian crisis on our border, and opening up legal ways for people to come to this country and cracking down on cartels and human smugglers and then those who abuse those immigrants in this country that are here undocumented. As part of this program, LULAC will be announcing a statewide education Know Your Rights program, where we will be notifying anybody stopped that they should know their rights. They have a right to the Fifth Amendment to not say anything that can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have a right to bail, immigration bail or regular bail. You have a right to an attorney, and you should not sign any documents, including deportation documents or any documents forced on you by a judge, until you have an attorney present. These and other rights will be articulated so that every individual stopped, detained illegally or legally will be able to know their rights and handle their cases in a proper due process court of jurisdiction here in the state of Texas. However, it is unfortunate that we have to resort to this. We know that every history has shown us that whenever you start scapegoating the other, you start discriminating against the other, it only leads to terrible things, as we saw in the 1930s in Nazi Germany, and what we saw throughout all the purges that have occurred throughout American and human history. So again, it's a sad day. Today, Governor Abbott spit in the eyes of the Statue of Liberty and what the Statue of Liberty stands for, and our country as a country of immigrants. And so LULAC will continue both to fight it legally, politically, and also by education programs for our immigrants in this state. I'm going to do it in Spanish. Mi nombre es Domingo Garcia, y hay esta fecha, el 18 de marzo, es un día que va a ir en los libros de historia como un día donde la discriminación, el racismo, el uso de que la invasión de la gente café o de ellos es una excusa para posiblemente haber la más grande tipo de racial que hemos visto en la historia de Texas. En Texas, más del 50% de la población es latina o afroamericana. Posiblemente podemos ser sospechosos de estar en este estado que es de nosotros ilegalmente. Así es que LULAC va a seguir peleando en la corte. Vamos hablando con el Departamento de Justicia para que cuando vayamos en corte los méritos de este caso, que sea ganado, porque en la opinión de nosotros esta ley es inconstitucional, ilegal, y también aparte de eso es algo que solamente va a decir y va a incluir un racial perfil por decir por todo el estado de Texas, y va a posiblemente causar violaciones de los derechos civiles y humanos de los latinos en este estado. Así es que también vamos a comenzar un programa de educación. Todos los inmigrantes y las personas que son detenidas deben saber sus derechos. Número uno, que pueden tomar clases para saber que tienen derecho de fianza, tienen derecho de un abogado, tienen derecho de firmar cualquier documento antes de que tengan un abogado presente para saber lo que están firmando. Aparte de eso, hay fianzas de inmigración si no tienen documentos, y aparte de eso tenemos documentos para ayudar a la gente para saber todos sus derechos si van a corte de inmigración o una corte criminal aquí en el estado de Texas. Y estamos preparados para seguir en la lucha hasta la victoria. Okay, that's all I have. I'll take questions from any of the press.
Domingo Garcia, Rudy Nieves con Telemundo.
Go ahead.
Una pregunta, el hecho de que esta decisión se haya tomado tan rápido, en menos de 24 horas, ¿qué pudiese pasar ahora en los próximos días?
Bueno, bajo la decisión de la Corte Suprema, la SB4 es la ley ahorita, se puede enforzar por cualquier departamento de policía en el estado de Texas, y por eso nosotros vamos a seguir la lucha en la demanda que sigue todavía el juicio todavía sigue para adelante. Y segundo, dando la información de educación a todos los inmigrantes y todos los documentados y los ciudadanos americanos, de qué son sus derechos, de que tienen derecho de fianza, tienen derecho de no decir nada si les preguntan su estatus de inmigración, tienen derecho a tener un abogado y tienen derecho a tener un abogado antes de que firmen cualquier documento, incluyendo un documento que sea una deportación voluntaria. Tengan un abogado presente porque posiblemente pueden ganar su caso en que sean detenidos por la ley por cualquier razón.
Hi there, Domingo. This is Matt Roy over at News 4 Fox 29. I have a question for you as well. Speaking to a lot of the border sheriffs, they're furious about this because one, it'll cost them more money, and two, it'll cost them more resources. Why would border sheriffs be upset about the state trying to better handle immigration? How can you kind of expand upon that?
Because basically Border Patrol agents are the ones supposed to be handling illegal immigration. That's been the way it's been since the founding of this country, that the federal government has immigration authority. Now with each sheriff deciding whether they're going to enforce the law or not, whether taxpayer dollars from Cameron County, Hidalgo County, Webb County, Laredo, or El Paso County, those tax dollars are not going to be used to basically arrest individuals who are coming here to be somebody's nanny or work in somebody's yard or work in some meatpacking plant. And now their jails are going to be filled up. Their courtrooms are going to be filled up. And that's going to be put at the feet of the taxpayers of those particular counties, which are some of the poorest counties in the state of Texas and in this country, by the way.
Domingo García, es Andrea Rega de Noticias Univisión 23. A pesar de esta ley, los inmigrantes todavía tienen que seguir con sus vidas, tienen que llevar a los niños a la escuela en la mañana, tienen que ir a trabajar, tienen que ir al supermercado, tienen que salir. Muchos de nuestros inmigrantes no tienen accesos a abogados. ¿Cómo van ustedes a enfrentar esto? ¿Tienen una línea telefónica a la cual los inmigrantes que tengan preocupación o sean detenidos por la policía y crean que los están deteniendo bajo esta ley puedan comunicarse y puedan obtener asesoría legal?
Así es, estamos en LULAC está preparando una línea para ayudar a cualquier migrante que tenga preguntas o que sientan que sus derechos civiles o humanos han sido violados, pero ahorita no lo tenemos, estamos preparando, pero no estamos esperando esta respuesta tan rápida de la Corte Suprema, dejando que la ley siga implementada Así es que vamos a entre los próximos 48 o 72 horas tener un número con abogados voluntarios que pueden asistir a nuestra comunidad.
Hi, same question in English. I was going to ask you, what does this program look like for, the migrants that you guys are willing to help? How is this going to work for them? If they have questions, how are you guys going to be able to help them out?
Yeah, we're looking at we weren't expecting that the Supreme Court would rule this rapidly, but LULAC will be looking at creating a hotline with volunteer attorneys and paralegals who would be able to assist anybody calling regarding if they felt that their civil rights were violated or if they were illegally detained or held over. During a lot of the deportation raids that were done back in 10, 20 years ago, we found multiple U.S. citizens that were picked up because they didn't have their passport or their green card with them and detained for sometimes 24 to 72 hours before they were released. And we want to make sure that if they're subject to that they're able to file complaints against those officers that abuse their rights, file suits against those cities or counties or constables that maybe also violate their civil rights.
Sir, Carrie Maddox with KVI in El Paso. I'm just wondering, obviously this has some, or could potentially have some implications on how states pass laws or try to pass laws in the future that are challenging to traditionally federally handled situations such as immigration. Do you think that that's a strong possibility now? Do you think that this kind of opened up the floodgates for that?
Well, we already see that Georgia has a similar law that's passed the House and going on to the Georgia Senate, very similar to this. And like I said, Arizona tried to do this, 10 years ago, and that was declared unconstitutional. Why the Supreme Court would not continue the precedent they had already said, I don't know, but I'm concerned about the fact that we have, a different Supreme Court with six Republican judges that may not be as open to the supremacy clause of the U.S. Constitution as it normally has been upheld. But LULAC is continuing to fight the battle both in the courts as well as turning out the vote this November so that politicians who supported this law are taken out. And then third, of course, educating our community so that we can minimize the civil rights violations that we expect to see in the next coming months.
Sorry, another question from KHOU from Houston. I wanted to ask you, I feel like this law doesn't just affect Latinos because yes, Latinos are the majority that are crossing the border, but we're seeing people from other countries. Do you think that this could also affect other people? Could they just racially profile whoever they want?
Well, look, the fact of the matter is Texas is a majority minority state. 42% of the population is Latino, Hispanic, foreign looking, even though we're the first ones here. That's why you got El Paso, San Antonio, and all these towns, Amarillo, named after Spanish surnames. But I understand if you're in a rural part of Texas, a suburban part of Texas, the fact that you look Hispanic, you look Asian, you look African-American, maybe you're from Haiti, that they're going to be used as a pretext to stop people and search their vehicles and detain people. And it could lead to a lot of abuses. And hopefully we can avoid tragedies. I can see tragic things happening when police officers try to enforce immigration laws if they're not prepared for, and people that might fight back or not like it, because they feel they're being picked on because they look different or they look like the other. I see Mark Greenberg has had his hand up for a little bit.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is going to be a follow-up to that last question. Do you anticipate what you were talking about 20 years ago repeating? I'm thinking of what happened in Mississippi with those mass immigration raids, and that was just only a couple of years ago. What do you anticipate in terms of the?
I think you're going to get some rogue sheriffs like Sheriff Arpaio in Phoenix who are going to start setting up roadblocks and asking everybody, show me your papers. Sounds like something out of Nazi Germany in 1938, but we're talking about Texas 2024, where what's to stop a constable or a sheriff from setting up roadblocks and asking everybody for their papers and their passports or their birth certificates. This is very problematic, and I think it's going to result in racial profiling and civil rights violations and a lot of lawsuits against a lot of cities and counties throughout the state of Texas. And I think this is a Pandora's box that the Supreme Court should not allow to be open. We haven't seen states' rights like this used since, 1860. States ought to have the right to succeed from the Union.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. We will be probably within the next 72 hours issuing a Know Your Rights pamphlet that we're going to be putting out and handing out to Texans. And we're also going to be putting out a smaller version that we're going to be texting and emailing throughout the state of Texas, as well as putting on town hall meetings with elected leaders and law enforcement to allow everybody to know what their rights are and what to fear and not fear in terms of this implementation of this new law. So,
hey, Domingo, this is Meredith Yeomans. I'm with NBC5 in Dallas. I apologize. I wasn't able to hit unmute before you gave last call. In our area, at least, we haven't found a law enforcement agency that is saying, yes, we're going to begin enforcing this and do kind of the worst case scenario that people have envisioned. What would you say to those law enforcement agencies who are sort of, considering enforcing this and who are trying to figure out how they're going to enforce it?
that they should wait. I still think that the Supreme Court, when they make a final decision, if this law will be considered unconstitutional. But in the meantime, if you arrest a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident and you detain them, that's a wrongful imprisonment. That's a wrongful detention, and you could be sued. A complaint could be filed against that police officer. I know that if I'm detained, I would. I know that a lot of my family members and our community leaders would react the same way. So that they should probably wait and see before taking any actions. I really don't anticipate the major cities to enforce this yet until there's further outlines and guidelines put out by the Department of Justice or the Attorney General. But I can see smaller jurisdictions, let's just say outside of Dallas, if you're in, I don't know, Terrell, or if you're out in, Wichita Falls, that things could happen in those smaller towns that would not happen in the major cities like Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, or Austin.
Thank you.
All right, thank y'all. And any questions, we'll follow up with our communications director, David Cruz.
Thank you
y'all.
very much for attending, Mr. President. Thank you again. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, I've put my phone number and email in the chat box. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Yes.